What's up, everybody? I'm back with part 6 of Kathleen Zellner's latest filing on behalf of Stephen Avery. She filed it last Friday on January the 12th, 2024. I will link all of the other parts in the description below so you can go have a view for yourself if you are interested. But in this one, we're going to pick right back up where we left off, and it is of the direct connection element of Denny. No bright lines can be drawn as to what constitutes a third-party direct connection to a crime. Rather, circuit courts must assess the evidence in conjunction with all of the other evidence to determine whether, under the totality of the circumstances, the evidence suggests that a third-party perpetrator actually committed the crime. In its opinion, the circuit court argued the Thomas Sawinski affidavit taken as true for the purpose of this motion directly links Bobby Dassey to the possession of the victim's vehicle. However, possession of the vehicle does not directly link Bobby Dassey to the homicide itself. Then the circuit court highlighted the fact that Thomas Sawinski's affidavit does not mention seeing Bobby Dassey with the key to the victim's car. It ignored the fact that when Teresa Halbach's vehicle was found by law enforcement volunteers, it was locked. Clearly, Bobby Dassey had the key to the vehicle. Further, the circuit court ignored all of the forensic evidence used to convict Stephen Avery was discovered after Bobby Dassey was seen moving Teresa Halbach's vehicle onto the Avery property. In State v. Williams, the appellate court found a direct connection between the perpetrator of the murder and the fact that he had possession of the victim's vehicle several days after her murder. Specifically, the court explained, "We agree with the state that from all of these circumstances, under a common sense, non-technical approach, a reasonable police officer would draw the reasonable inference that both Williams and Armstead had been in possession of Brown's stolen car. There was probable cause to believe that both Williams and Armstead probably had committed a crime involving the murder victim's stolen car." State versus Williams. Applying this common sense approach here, the Thomas Sawinski evidence provides the direct connection, that is, Bobby being witnessed in possession of Teresa Halbach's vehicle, to Bobby Dassey having committed the murder of Teresa Halbach and planning the evidence to frame Stephen Avery. Rather than recognizing the significance of evidence that Bobby Dassey had possession of and thus access to Teresa Halbach's vehicle, the circuit court required Thomas Sawinski to see Bobby Dassey in possession of the electronics inside Teresa Halbach's vehicle. That is bonkers. However, a reasonable inference can easily be made that because the electronics had not been found by law enforcement when Bobby Dassey was seen by Mr. Thomas Sawinski with Teresa Halbach's vehicle, they were still inside the vehicle. In State versus KNAPP, in this particular case, the defendant was the last person seen with the victim as they went out together that night. During the trial, the defendant sought to introduce evidence of other potential suspects, including the victim's husband, Brunner, and the woman he was having an affair with, Mass, on the night that the victim was murdered. Specifically, the defense thought to introduce hearsay evidence through the testimony of a witness, Farrell, who was close friends with a man named Borchardt, whom Mass had lived with at the time but has since passed away. Through Farrell, the defense thought to introduce statements made to him by that person regarding the observations of Mass's behavior right after the homicide and observations of Brenner's truck at Mass's residence after the murder. The Wisconsin Supreme Court found that the third party of the Denny analysis and the connection was at issue. However, ultimately it found that the evidence supplied the missing direct connection using the following reasoning. The evidence at issue in this case connects the third parties, Brunner and Mass, to a crime in a number of ways. It establishes that Brunner lied to investigators about his whereabouts at the time of the murder. Mass was with Brunner at the time his wife was murdered, and Mass was observed a short time after Brunner's death carrying a paper bag and getting into Brunner's waiting truck. Most importantly, the evidence puts Brunner in Watertown, a relative proximity to the location where the homicide occurred, and near the time of the murder. Based upon that information, we hold that the circuit court correctly determined that the evidence establishes Brunner's motive. One of those Brunners mentioned was the wife. Opportunity and connection to the crime. Further, we hold that the circuit court applied the proper legal standard and appropriately exercised its discretion in admitting this evidence under Denny. The court found that based upon these three inferences listed above, the hearsay evidence established Brunner's connection to the crime and also fulfilled the motive and opportunity prongs of Denny, which it did not even dispute. If the same reasoning were applied to Stephen Avery's case, the circuit court would have found far stronger evidence of a direct connection to allow the defense to present Bobby Dassey as a potential third party pursuant to Denny. At bare minimum, the Thomas Swinsky evidence connects Bobby Dassey to Teresa Halbach's murder in the same way that the hearsay evidence did to the third party in the case we just talked about. It establishes that Bobby lied to investigators about his whereabouts during times relevant to determining Teresa Halbach's murder. Noting, of course, that the exact time of Teresa Halbach's murder is not known. Like Mass, who was observing carrying a paper bag after the murder, which the Wisconsin Supreme Court found was material, Bobby was seen with the victim's vehicle after Teresa Halbach's murder. And 3, the evidence certainly puts Bobby Dassey in close proximity to the location where the homicide is alleged to have occurred, combined with evidence showing that Bobby Dassey, according to his own testimony, was one of the last people to see Teresa Halbach alive, would have satisfied Denny had the circuit court applied the only reasoning in the case we just talked about. The Supreme Court of Wisconsin offers an illustration to exemplify what type of evidence can show a direct connection to a degree of certainty required by the legitimate tendency test to admit evidence regarding a third-party suspect. By illustration, where it is shown that a third person not only had the motive and opportunity to commit the crime, but was also placed in such proximity to the crime to show he may have been the guilty party, the evidence is admissible. Even if the court's numerous factual errors were correct, and Brendan Dassey was directly linked by forensic evidence to this murder, and his confession was admissible evidence against Stephen Avery, this does not allow the circuit court to dismiss the powerful evidence of a third party's direct connection to the murder. Overwhelming evidence against the defendant may not serve as the basis for excluding evidence of a third party's opportunity or direct connection to the crime. By evaluating the strength of only one party's evidence, no logical conclusion can be reached regarding the strength of contrary evidence offered by the other side to rebut or cast doubt. The conclusion: for the reasons stated here, Stephen Avery respectfully requests that this court grant him one of the following alternative remedies: reversing orders denying post-conviction relief and grant an evidentiary hearing. 2, reserve the judgments of the conviction and the orders denying post-conviction relief and remand for a new trial. Or 3, grant any other relief this court deems appropriate. And that is the final bit. And just the last couple pages are who the lawyers are and some signatures and things like that. So that is the last part of this filing. And if this doesn't get at least a look at by the court to get an evidentiary hearing, man, I don't know. Even if Bobby had absolutely nothing to do with this, there is so much alleged evidence placing him in situations where he could at least be a suspect in this crime, which is all this needs in order to get Stephen Avery an evidentiary hearing. Even if he didn't do it, there are many possible situations and scenarios where he could have had the possibility to do it. And if Bobby Dassey didn't do it and had absolutely nothing to do with this, he is one of the most unfortunate people on the planet because of all of this stuff actually pointing at him. Just truly crazy. I guess we will see soon, hopefully, what the circuit court or what this new judge decides to do with this newest filing on behalf of Stephen Avery, filed by Kathleen Zellner. Let me know what you think. Leave some comments below. I hope you're having a good day, and I will see you again soon.